All right, welcome back again. Another Security Plus practice exam. 5 more questions to allow you, or I should say, to help you pass your Security Plus exam. We're going to take an in-depth dive as we go through these questions. Give you a little bit of time to answer them, and then we'll go through and we'll actually talk about why the answer is the answer, or why we ruled out a specific answer. Let's jump right into it. Let's start with question number 1. A company is conducting a risk assessment to identify potential threats to its IT infrastructure. They have determined the likelihood and impact of various risks and calculated the ALE for each risk. Which type of risk assessment approach are they using? I know this one comes back into the ALE. This is another point where I hammer down on you. You gotta know the acronyms. You gotta know them. You gotta go through and memorize those acronyms. Students often ask me, like, well, how can I memorize these acronyms? Well, you say it in a sentence and then you use the acronym. For instance, if I was going to use, I don't know, TLS, I would mention, well, I'm using transport layer security on HTTPS, and I would say it actually like I'm using transport layer security, TLS, right, on HTTPS, or Hyper Transfer Text Protocol, secure, right? And just learn to talk like that. Learn to talk like that. It actually helps out. Saying it makes it, and then you can go through the process and start talking it that way. Also, you want to surround yourself with people that are still doing the exam. Most people that are studying for Security Plus, not all, but most people that are studying for this, they usually have a group that is studying along with them. And so it makes it a little bit easier. All right, I feel like I've talked enough. If you need more time, go ahead and pause the video, but we're going to continue on. Let's answer this one. A company is conducting a risk assessment to identify potential threats to its IT infrastructure. They have determined the likelihood and impact of various risks and calculated the annual loss expectancy for each risk. Which type of risk assessment approach are they using? Well, we know that ALE calculates through single loss expectancy multiplied by annual rate of occurrence to assign a dollar risk. That's where ALE comes from. And to do that, we know that we've got either a qualitative, quantitative, hybrid, or heuristic. Let's start with heuristic. Heuristic is based on experience. It's based on that judgment of our gut feeling. It's based on understanding that we have experience in this. And then we use our intuition and we go, okay, well, this happened to this. It's really not a numbers game. And we are specifically talking about numbers because we're talking about ALE. And knowing that ALE deals with that single loss expectancy multiplied by our annual rate of occurrence, we kind of can rule out heuristic. That leaves us, I think, to kind of a hybrid motion. Now, a hybrid is understanding that I've got a dollar value associated with it, much like ALE is, and I've got that number, but then I'm going to also apply my gut feeling to it, right? So I'm taking the facts and figures, and then I'm going through and providing a judgment call on what we're going to accept and what we're not going to accept. And it's based on experience as well. So it's kind of a mix between factual data and then that knowledge of experience, which is quite similar to qualitative. Now, often I have students that are confused between the two. Qualitative doesn't really take the facts and figures as much as takes those facts and figures and then categorizes them. So, for instance, maybe I've got a high ALE, right? And then I say, okay, well, that ALE would be a high, a medium, or a low. So if I have an annual loss expectancy of, say, $500, I might categorize that as low, where a high ALE might be something like $1 million, right? And so I take that and then I categorize it, and then I add my own gut feeling to it. So much like hybrid, but a little bit of a tweak to it, right? So we're doing a little bit more of that gut feeling because we're categorizing it into high, medium, and low, and then we're throwing on that subjective method onto it. However, quantitative is all about the facts and figures, all about that money, honey. And so it's going to be B. Quantitative is going to be our correct answer on this one. If you got that one right, congratulations. If not, as long as you learned something, that's what we're here for. And there we go, we got quantitative. Let's move on to question number 2. An organization must comply with GDPR regulations to protect personnel data of EU citizens. What type of regulatory requirement is GDPR considered? I would not expect CompTIA to tell you that it's protecting personal data of EU citizens. I would expect CompTIA to tell you protect personal data and then stop. It's not going to tell you EU. At least I don't expect it to. Maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe. But a little bit of a hint there. So what do you think? What do you think? I know. Remember, we only want to spend about 30 to 45 seconds on a question. We want to read the question, read the answers, then reread the question, find out exactly what it's asking us. We do not want to lead more into the question than what it's asking us. I see this all the time where students read into something and they're trying to find a little hole in there, or they're trying to overthink it. Don't overthink questions. Look at it and then answer what it's asking. Let's tackle this one. If you need more time, of course, you can pause the video. An organization must comply to GDPR regulations to protect the personal data of EU citizens. What type of regulatory requirement is the GDPR considered? Well, if you know GDPR, then you know that it's not industry specific. That would be NIST, right? NIST would provide us a little bit of industry specific leverage there, right? Because it's called the National Initiative for Standards and Technology. That would be more of a NIST thing, more of a industry guideline. You could even identify maybe ISO as an industry-specific international standards organization, right? I feel like would be more of that point. We can rule out local, I think. Local would be state laws, maybe local laws, something like that, where it only applies to our businesses or our data for a specific community, for something local to you, right? GDPR, really not that aspect of it, especially when we literally gave us the hint of European Union, right? I think that kind of a big clue right there. I think we can also rule out national, right? We know that national is European Union, and while we could point out to a national law there is no country called the European Union. There is Europe, which again, still not a country. Right? Now, maybe if we said UK, maybe if we said France, maybe if we said Germany or the United States, that would be a national law. But EU, which is GDPR, is all about the EU. That is international. That is multiple nations. And so we know that it must be D. It is an international regulatory requirement. So D is going to be our correct answer on that one. Not too difficult, I think. Moving on to question number 3. A company's IT department has implemented a new automated system to handle repetitive tasks, allowing employees to focus on more complex projects. How can this approach contribute to employee retention? How can it contribute to employee retention? Remember, we want to read the question. I see this all the time. I can see somebody right now screaming through this question and going, repetitive tasks allowing employees to focus on more complex projects, and then stopping, and they don't look at what the answer or the question is asking them. And that is such a dangerous thing to do, especially for CompTIA. So make sure you don't do that. Make sure that you're reading the entire question. Make sure you reread what is the question asking me. What is the question asking me? All right, let's try and tackle this one. I feel like we can get rid of limiting career growth. I feel like if we're asking for the bonuses, which we are, we're saying how can this approach contribute to employee retention? I feel like limiting career growth would be the wrong answer. I feel like if I want career growth or if I want employee retention, I don't want to limit career growth. So that is a limiting factor, not a bonus. So right off the bat, I feel like we can get rid of that one. I feel like we get rid of A as well, increased workload. I know that if I was getting paid for a job, I definitely don't want more workload. I want less workload. And so I feel like just by logically looking at that, we can get rid of A. So that leaves B and C. B and C. So what do you think? What do you think on those two? Give you a second, just in case you got it wrong. I'll give you a second more to reread B and C and decide which one do you want to go with. What do you think? Well, if you answered C, I have some bad news for you. That is incorrect. It is not C. We are not reducing the need for manual intervention. While that is a benefit, and it is 100% a benefit, we want to improve retention. And then we're asking specifically about improving retention, not about improving workflow, right? That is not what we're asking for. That means it must be B, providing opportunities for professional development. Believe it or not, if I went to you and I said, hey, how do you feel about getting, CISP, and the company will pay for it? We're going to pay for your CISSP, right? How would you feel about that? Well, you'd be like, hell yeah, I want to do that. The company's going to pay for it. That's going to give me better career growth. It's going to give me better accolades. Maybe I'll get some more money, and the company's paying for it. Hell yeah, right? By reducing the need for manual intervention, well, that's going to streamline our workflow. It's going to make our business more profitable. That's not what we're asking for. And so the answer is going to be B. The answer is going to be B. All right, let's move on. Question number 4. An organization is setting up a wireless network and wants to ensure secure authentication for its users. They decide to use WPA3. Which authentication protocol is commonly associated with WPA3 to enhance our security? What do you think? What do you think on this one? Difficult one if we look at this one. All right, if you need more time, I would suggest at this point that you go ahead and pause the video because we're going to go over it. Let's start with A, PAP. Well, PAP is a simple authentication protocol that uses a username and password, but it's sent in clear text. Not secure. Not secure at all, right? And it's not associated with WPA3. So I feel like PAP is an easy one to get rid of. I feel like that one is like, let's just go ahead and get rid of PAP, right? I don't think we're going to be sending our username and password in clear text. Probably not something we want to do. What about CHAP? Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol. By the way, PAP is Password Authentication Protocol, in case you were wondering. But CHAP, Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol, a little bit more secure than PAP. A little bit more secure. It uses a three-way handshake, much like TCP, and it transmits a hash value, but not associated with WPA3. Not associated. It's an upgrade from PAP. A little bit older technology still. A little bit older still. That leaves EAP and Radius. What do you think? What do you think? I'll give you a second. If you guessed it wrong, this is your opportunity to take another stab at it. What do you think? Between C and D. Well, if you said Radius, which is Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service, then you would know that it provides centralized authentication, authorization, accounting, or AAA management. And while it's used in conjunction with EAP, it's not supported with EAP. And EAP would be our correct answer. So EAP, Extensible Authentication Protocol, supports multiple authentication methods. We use tokens, certificates, smart cards. It's commonly used in wireless networks, right? And associated specifically with WPA3. And so A is going to be our correct answer. What did I say? I said A. That's not A. It's C. I don't know why I'm reading this. I was like, oh, PAP, da, da, da. No, it's not A. It's C. It's EAP. It's EAP, Extensible Authentication Protocol. When you think wireless authentication, think EAP, Extensible Authentication Protocol. That's what we're looking at. I don't know why I said A. Must be. You know what it is? I think I'm getting dementia. I really do sometimes. I think some of my students would argue that that's probably accurate. Okay, EAP is going to be our right answer. There we go. All right, question number 5. Question number 5. A company discovered that several domain names similar to the official domain were registered by malicious actors. These domains are used to trick users into visiting fake websites. What type of attack in this scenario describing, and what is a common mitigation technique? So we're looking for not just the name, but the mitigation. And I'm looking through the answers here, and I'm thinking to myself, if you know one or the other, you're probably in a good place. You're probably in a good place. What do you think? Oh, this could be a difficult one. I feel like this one's actually pretty easy, believe it or not. I feel like there's some very easy ones here. I mean, there are a couple ones, but there's a couple that we can just get off the bat, right? Which is typical of CompTIA, where we can just get rid of a couple answers right off the bat. Which leads me to my next hint. Remember, we want to answer every question. Every question. When we go through our exam. If we don't know the answer, if we're completely lost, we're still going to answer. We got a 25% chance. If we can rule out at least one, we got a 33% chance. If we rule out two, we got a 50% chance. I will take a 25%, 33%, or even 50% chance of getting one right over a 0% chance every single time. And so that's what we want to do. We want to answer every question. We can always flag it, which we're going to do. If we don't know the answer, we're gonna guess. Then we're going to flag it on the top right. We can always come back to it. Maybe there's hints in future questions. I actually did that on my very first Security Plus exam. I didn't know what the answer was. They was throwing a lot of acronyms at me. I was brand new. I was a cybersecurity baby, and I could not, for the life of me, remember what the stupid acronym was. And then 2 questions later, it told me what the acronym was. I was really excited. It was in the question. I was really excited, and so I went back and I answered the question. By the way, I had guessed wrong. I had guessed wrong, but that's okay. We can always go back, right? So that's a good point. All right, let's answer this one. If you need more time, go ahead and pause it. A company discovered that several domain names similar to the official domain were registered by malicious actors. This would be something like Goggle instead of Google, or GOO or GOGGLE. I think I said that one, Goggle. Let's be Google, Google. Yeah, you get that point, right? That type of attack. What type of attack is the Sarah describing, and what is a common mitigation technique? I feel like we know that it's not phishing. I feel like phishing, email attack, we're going to spam everybody and try to get them to click on a link. I feel like phishing is the easy one to get rid of. I feel like we can get rid of that one right off the bat. So that gives us a 33% chance at this point, right? I feel like the next one we can get rid of is man-in-the-middle attack because it's using encryption, right? And I feel like we not only is a man-in-the-middle attack, or MITMD, not something we would see with this type of attack, but it's identifying encryption as being a mitigation technique, which, again, I don't see how encryption would make any difference if we're tricking people into going to a fake website. It would still be encrypted. It doesn't matter. You're still interacting with the website. So I feel like D is a safe one to get rid of. That leaves B and C. B and C. What do you think? Between B and C, which one do you think is a better answer? If you got it wrong, this is your opportunity to grab a second look at it. What do you think? What do you think? Well, I like spoofing. I really do. Spoofing is where I take it and I fake it, right? I make it till I fake it till I make it. I could spoof a lot of things. I can do DNS spoofing. I do ARP spoofing. I could do email spoofing. I could do website spoofing. Can I do website spoofing? Even if I did, then that would be a legitimate name linked to a wrong IP address. That means typo squatting would be the better answer. Typo squatting is where we register domain names that are very similar to another name. So like Goggle, like something like that, that would be typo squatting. Now spoofing might be an attack on an email where we go through and we can spoof the email address, right? I've even seen it where we can spoof the IP address. We call that normally ARP spoofing or DNS spoofing, excuse me, right? We could do that. But typo squatting is specifically where we're registering websites that are technically legitimate websites. I say that with quotes, right? But it has malicious activity on it, and it's aimed at fooling the user, right? Or to when somebody misprints or mistypes a name, right? So what can we do against this? We could do domain monitoring and protection. What do we mean by that? Well, we actively monitor domain registration. So if I was Google, then I would look at typos, and Goggle would probably be one of those. So I would register Goggle as a domain name for Google, and it would automatically shift you over to Google. So if you mistyped the name, then it would automatically switch you over. And that's what we're talking about that. So C would be our correct answer on that one.